Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidtless Live. I'm Kurt Schmidt, president and partner at Foundry, and this show today is meant to educate and inspire leaders like yourself. What a day, what a show, what a week it's been. It's still, what week is it? It's a week. What day is it? It's Thursday. Thursday. And here we are. We're going to be talking about all things imposter syndrome with my good friend Rich. There's so many different types of approaches to this subject, and just in recent years it's become a very popular topic. And Rich here, who does a lot of coaching with both leaders, executives, he has got a really unique perspective on it, and I really appreciate the way he looks at the world. So I'm excited to talk to him. Before we do that, real quick, I'm going to talk about we are hiring at Foundry. Speaking of, we're looking for a number of different roles, but obviously one is a developer. We're looking for some developers. So if you've got some interest, check out foundrymakes.com/careers. We'd love to hear from you. We're growing. It's going to be another crazy year of growth this year, so I'm excited about that. But before we talk anything more about that, let's jump in and talk to Rich. I'm excited to talk to him, and let's see what he's got to say. Rich, how are you today, sir?
Hey man, how are you? It's I heard you mention it the day of the week. I'm like, it kind of feels like the 27th month of 2023. Like I'm just as lost and combobulated, but
It is.
everything comes back to being grounded when I get to talk to you. So good to see you, man.
It's good to see you. Yeah, I'm really interested to talk to you today because, over the past few years, and I've just heard it piling up even more and more recently, is this idea of imposter syndrome. And I've done my research. I understand it. I mean, I feel like I've experienced it myself, but I also know there's another side to it, another camp to it. So I want to talk to you specifically about the different ideas behind it. But just to kick things off, Rich, in your opinion, what is imposter syndrome? What is it? How do you define it?
The biggest thing about imposter syndrome though, that I relate to, and when I think about what it actually is, it's an expansion on the typical definition of what imposter syndrome is. So imposter syndrome, as typically defined and discussed, is not feeling that you're as competent or worthy as individuals that are around you, whether it's professional or personally or socially, that you're not as good as everybody else is. So you start getting in these inner voices of self-doubt and self-deprecation because you feel like you're not competent enough, or you don't know enough, or you haven't achieved enough. So why am I in this conversation with these other individuals? And where I think it also expands a little bit is to the performance, because I think there are different elements to who we are and how we identify ourselves professionally and personally, that we want to feel valued. We want to feel a part of the conversation, but then we start talking ourselves down off of that. And that's where imposter syndrome to me starts creeping in and becoming very detrimental.
Yeah, that's the other argument side of things that I hear, though, is that sometimes this idea of imposter syndrome can just be caused by jerks, by people around you. You're in a bad culture, and they're making you feel like you know
Mhm.
less than you do, or maybe you do know less, right? I mean, I've definitely had people say, "You don't know what that is," and I'm like,
Right. Right.
No, you know what I mean? And so while that's why I'm asking, like, where do these what sort of problems end up causing imposter syndrome? Is it just myself? Is it outside forces? Is it a mix?
I think it's a blend of both.
Okay.
And so when I think about my personal journey and people that I've worked with previously, is that there's something along the early lines, because again, if you think about the timeline of your life from a purity standpoint, from a self-doubt standpoint, you don't have self-doubt as a kid. You really don't feel less than as a child. You're very creative, you're exploratory. Now, depending on your upbringing, or depending on how your family life is or your schooling goes, or as you get older, if you get into any kind of extracurricular activities, whether it's sports or art or performance, you then start getting compared, because that is when that self doubt starts creeping in. Now, if you have a family situation that maybe you're talked to negatively, and maybe it's because your parents or your influences have been battling their own self-doubt and their own imposter syndrome, so they're trying to rain that negativity down on you, that could cause that. So it could be an early seed that's planted, or maybe, because because middle school sucks for everyone.
It
So
does.
maybe it's the middle school. We'll call it the middle school factor. We'll change imposter syndrome to the middle school factor because everybody goes through that. I'm changing. I don't know what's going on. And we start really getting critical of ourselves
Yep.
because again, like we don't start off that way. I mean, I've got two young sons and they don't walk around going, wow, I really wish I was better at coloring than I am. They don't do that because they don't have that concept. But
Yep.
as we get older, and as we get into those extracurricular activities or comparative situations, and then once we get into, get into our professional life, there's always competition and there's always comparison. And there's this hierarchy of job descriptions and job titles and responsibilities that it really takes hold at that point. So I think it's a combination of both the early influences and from a social family standpoint, but then also as you progress through your schooling and get into your professional life, it's those determinants too that really have an impact on how you view yourself.
Yeah, the idea of labeling things, I think, can be a powerful thing too, because you can take it and set it aside, right, and say and look at it and
Mhm.
say, okay, this is what that thing is, and now how can I address it? I know some people have issues with labeling things, but I think it's important and powerful to be able to take these things that might affect you negatively, be able to kind of pull them out and say, okay, I'm going to set you over here on the table. I'm going to look at you. I'm going to view this in more three-dimensional sort of aspect, kind of like what you're mentioning, right? Is it one sort of
Right.
outside force that's impacting me? Is it a lot of outside forces impacting me? Is it
Mhm.
just my perception of reality? It's my perception of what's happening, right? Because I think it's okay to be in a spot where you're just learning. And I think with all the
Mhm.
things that we can consume these days, like podcasts, YouTube, all these different things on demand, it can make you feel that everybody is kind of further ahead than you are, because you have all this access to these experts, right? And you
Right.
might not feel like that expert. But if all you're consuming all day is these things about people, talking about how much further they are along than you are, it can certainly make you feel that have you experienced that, Rich? Have you experienced that in your career?
100%. And actually, there are several different types of imposter syndrome, and the expert is one of them. So we talk about putting a title to something. There is that condition that you feel like you've never learned enough, and so therefore you can't do until you learn the right amount of things. But it's a cyclical problem because if I feel like I can't do something or I can't progress until I learn more and learn enough, but I never feel like I learn enough, then I'm never going to get to that point. And personally, from a professional and a personal standpoint, I've had numerous instances. And again, I go back to my definition of the expanded definition of imposter syndrome, where I want to know more
Yep.
and I want to be as educated to be in the conversation as much as possible. And at one point in my career, I tried to know everything about everything, and that's impossible. I mean, you simply cannot do that. And so it really is valuable to understand where your limitations are and where you're going to bring the most value. Yes, it's nice to know things and be able to converse. And I would be the first to say, talking about putting a label on things, I'll be the first to tell you that I know a whole lot or a whole little about a whole lot. And so I can have those conversations. But when it comes to that expert perfectionist mentality, we're never going to get there. But to your other point too, about putting a name on what this is. So again, I think in pictures, so I try to describe things in pictures. If you think about your current status of imposter syndrome as more like a gas fluid thing where it's floating through your body and your mind,
Yep.
that it just kind of drifts in and you don't see it coming, you don't know what it is, and all of a sudden you're consumed by this fog of imposter syndrome, of this self-doubt. That is tough to deal with because you don't know when it's going to come on, you don't know how quickly it's going to
Right.
overtake you, and you don't know what
Yep.
to do with it. So if you put a label to it, call it, again, call it imposter syndrome, call it the middle school me, do that, because then when you put a name to it, you can address it directly. You're containing it into this thing. And if you start identifying the triggers, which I talk about that when I talk about emotional intelligence a lot, that triggers will help you identify and deal with things as they come about. So if you know that there's a meeting that you go to or an individual that triggers you, to makes you not feel as smart as you actually are, understand that going into that, you understand that. So when you put a name to it and you contain it, you can then address it ahead of time, and you can react in a different way, or you can go into that meeting with a different mentality as opposed to thinking, oh God, I've got this meeting on Thursday and it's with these two people in my organization, and wow, they're so smart. I don't even know why I can't talk in this meeting. I can't do these things. You're talking yourself down and devaluing yourself before the meeting even starts.
Right.
So if you understand that and then focus in on the value that you can bring, that way you take that power back. You take that emotional control back.
Yeah, I think exactly to your point. I think it's important to take that power back, because you got to focus on the things that you are good at and the things that you do bring value in, right? And especially if you get, I've seen it happen a lot with people get hired at a new role, new job, and they don't see maybe exactly what the other people were seeing when they hired them, maybe because they're new. But again, it's important to realize that you do have value. You might not know that thing exactly right now, but you can learn it. You can get better at it. But
Right.
the reason why you're going to bring value is not because you know a ton about that thing. It's all the other things you're going to bring to that subject, the things that make you uniquely you, that are
Right.
going to get you to that spot. I mean, I showed a picture just a second ago. Somebody who does not have, that's somebody who doesn't, that's somebody who doesn't care
and
about.
God bless Bernie Sanders. Like, can you imagine what his social media feed and his text messages like? Bernie has exploded
Yeah.
in the last 36 hours.
He makes it
It's
so easy to make a meme out of him. Honestly, he just walks right into it. But
right.
again, you're looking at these, these people who you think, these business owners, senators. I
Mhm.
don't care who they are, right? They have this title and these different things. Um, they're just going through the paces as much as you are. It doesn't matter what level you're at. Everybody's learning and growing, and there's
Mhm.
just different stages that people are in. And it's okay to recognize that you're just in this separate stage. So with that, and you talked a little bit about it, but what are some key factors, Rich, for people that want to just attack this idea, this feeling that they're having? What are some of the first steps I should take? One, it sounds like what you said, which is just recognize that this,
Mhm.
is it like a 12-step program? Like step one is admitting you have imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I wouldn't even make it that, because my imposter syndrome is that I don't know that I can count to 12 to have a 12-step program. So, um, first
Yeah.
things first, sharing your feelings, because number one, the more, which is ironic, the more people talk about imposter syndrome, the more prevalent we realize it is. And so there's this guilt, right? Because imposter syndrome is all about feeling guilty about not knowing enough, or not feeling like you belong, or not feeling like, or feeling like you're going to say something stupid. And so when we talk about it, and I've had more people that have surprised me by saying, yeah, I really battle from imposter syndrome. I'm like, you run this really successful company, or you're knocking it out of the park. Like, you either are the best actor or actress I've ever met in my entire life, but how in the world are you suffering from imposter syndrome? You've got the world by the tail. But it's shocking when people dig into it and really admit it, what they're battling. And I think we all have that. And two, having imposter syndrome is okay. We're all going to have that point to exactly what you've been talking about. We're all going to be in a position where we don't know something.
Yep.
And that's okay.
It's
That's going to
okay.
be, you're going to be just fine. If you have imposter syndrome moments, that's fine. If you let your life be derailed, or shut down, or halted, or get stuck because you're too afraid to admit that you don't know something, or that you're not as smart as you could be, or you're not to this level yet, then that's problematic. I mean, and I think that's where we all really need to kind of just say, hey, look, I battle from it, you battle from it, everybody has suffered from it at some point. So just share your feelings. Again, get out of the idea that everybody else is perfect. Battle that imposter syndrome first, and then have the conversation.
Yeah,
And I
and
think,
yeah, exactly to that point, Rich. I think it's important that, is that if you're feeling that way, finding people that you trust to talk to about that you're feeling
mhm.
that way. And you don't have to necessarily walk in and say, "Hey, I have imposter syndrome. Help me." It could be that, I'm really interested in taking this course in drawing, and I'm really worried about showing up at class and everybody's going to have more experience than me, or I'm interested in learning this new area, but the people that I work with, they're not very good at helping people along, right? Because
Mm.
to your point, I think it is a cultural thing, not necessarily just a deficiency in yourself. It's also a manifestation of the people you're surrounding yourself with. If you're constantly surrounding yourself with know-it-alls or people who are genuinely insecure in the first place, it's going to be hard to find people that are going to help lift you up and move you out. So one of the biggest pieces of advice I got was, you know, you are kind of a result of all the people you surround yourself with. So if you are feeling that you're insecure and you're not getting to the next level, you might need to start looking elsewhere for
Hmm.
some people to surround yourself with, mentors, friends, just in general, colleagues, right? If you're working in
Right.
a culture, you're working in a company that doesn't value growth and doesn't value people making mistakes and learning from those mistakes, then you might have to go elsewhere to find that.
Well, yeah, all yes to all of that. I mean, it is. You hit all the nails on the head. Number one, if you surround yourself with people that are non-supportive, that are too worried. I mean, Bernie. I think deep down, Bernie's a softie. I mean, who
I
wears
just have to keep
mittens
throwing it in there.
to the
Sorry.
inauguration from a second grade teacher that's not a softie? Come on. But I think, number one, it is truly who your circle is, and I believe it was Ryan Estes who said something about having a personal board of directors. To me, that is really critical to long-term success, personally and professionally. By surrounding yourself with people that are going to be supportive, but also do the right things and tell you the right stuff, because you don't want that group that's going to shut you down, but you also don't want the group that's just going to blow smoke and be like, "Oh no, you're great, nothing needs to change, you're fine." You need to have that good, honest core of people that are going to say, you know what, you're really good at these three things. This you could probably use a little bit of work on, and here's what I would recommend you do, or here's what I've learned from. And I'll speak from experience. I had a circle of people that were like that, that were very caught up in their own status. And what I will say is that if you ever want to be an imposter syndrome consultant and make $1 million off of consulting on imposter syndrome, go to the perfectionists,
Yeah.
because those people are suffering the most.
Right.
And what they don't want to see happen is that you become more successful than them, because they're afraid that they're going to be exposed for who they are.
Right.
So that is you, for many reasons, get out of that circle. And what I will say, and present company included, I think the more people you surround yourself with that are supportive, that understand that there is success for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and that your success does not take away from my success, even if
Yeah.
we're in similar circles or in similar industries. That way, you're learning, you're growing, you feel comfortable. You're not going to feel shut down or shot down in anything that you're trying to accomplish. So I
Yep.
think that is really critical. And two, when you talk about a company culture, yeah, I mean, the ability, I mean, I've worked with companies that are very open-minded, very creative, and very dynamic. And there's no dumb questions. You can say whatever you want to say as long as you're getting your ideas out. Not all ideas are going to be perfect, but if you don't feel like you can share them, you can't explore them. And those companies thrive. They thrive. They're staying on the cutting edge of their industry. That is really where it's important. Now, I've been on the flip side too, where you've been in companies that are completely resistant to change,
Yep.
and that's fine. And I think that's their choice. But if you feel like you're stagnating, or you feel like you're not moving forward because you're in that kind of a culture, then you need to make a move. You need to apply at Foundry. That is what you need. You need to move into a culture that's going to be supportive of who you are as an individual.
Yeah. Because if that's your ultimate goal, if your ultimate goal is not to just sort of, stay under the radar and, right, and smooth out, if your goal is to grow and you've got to go to where those opportunities are, because they're not going to show up and knock at your door. I'm sorry. I wish they would.
Right.
It would be great. Like my shipped order from yesterday was fantastic. My Amazon order, but there's no Amazon Prime for personal growth. You have to go out and get it, right? You have to go out and find it. And yeah, it might be scary building those relationships with folks, because being vulnerable is scary, right? But
Right.
I can tell you that all the times that I've personally had enormous growth in my career, both professionally and just, as a leader, has been in those vulnerable moments, in those moments where I've said, like, yeah, I'm not sure what to do here. I'm not sure what I should be doing. And then listening and shutting up and listening.
Exactly. And as a leader too, you find that the more transparent and humble and very quick to admit where they don't know things. If you're a leader and you can do that, you're going
Yep.
to find that your teams are going to have more breadth to expand their knowledge, but also to grow. Because if they feel like that you're perfect, or that you're giving off this facade of being perfect, and they can't ask questions, and they can't make mistakes, and they can't challenge the current norm, I mean, be prepared to have a very underperforming, underengaged team. So
Yeah.
if you don't give them the ability to do that, long term, you're going to struggle as a team, as an organization, if you're not allowing that creative ability to grow and fail, or to try things, or to ask questions, or to challenge the norms. You've got to do that to be successful in the long run.
Yep. And that's the thing, is like the idea, and a leader, the word leader is a loaded word for some folks, because they're thinking like, oh, I've got people who report to me and all this other stuff. No, no, no. A leader is somebody that provides direction. That's it. Right. And it doesn't matter if you're the person working on the loading dock, the receptionist, the head engineer. It doesn't matter, right? A leader is somebody that people go to for direction, whether it be where's the bathroom, or
Right.
whether it be
Right.
where do I find this library to help me create this login screen. It doesn't.
Right.
Being a leader is someone who people go to, and sometimes the best leaders are the people just have the best questions. They don't know everything. Like Mike, who commented here just a minute ago, he said he realized that no one knows what they're doing. I realized that no one knows what they're doing and trying to figure it out as they go along, which is exactly right. Everybody
Right.
is doing that. But we get in our own way because we get into these little routines of I'm not good enough. I don't provide enough value. And I talk to people all the time that are interested in maybe doing a video series like I do, or a YouTube or podcast, or publishing more. And a lot of times the first thing is that they say is like, who wants to hear from me?
Right. Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like, well, they don't know if they want to hear from you yet. You haven't said anything.
Right. Exactly. And the other thing too is that, don't think because somebody else has said it, or because somebody else has talked about it, that your angle, or your opinion, or your twist on it isn't incredibly valuable. And for by no stretch of the imagination are pieces of content original by any means. No piece of music is original by any means, because it's influenced by something else. People are learning and growing all the way. It's a process. So
Yep.
I love that comment, and I think that's fantastic. Yes, we are all trying to figure things out as we go, and we're all trying to improve and grow, and nobody has it all figured out at any given point. Because even if you think you do, and maybe you do at some point, it's going to change.
Yep.
It's going to evolve, and there's going to be something else to pay attention to.
Exactly. Yeah. At one point, there was a person who was an expert in flip phone technology.
there was somebody. Yeah, exactly.
There was somebody who was the guru of it. Now, I'm hoping that they've grown and moved on.
On lock, right? Blockbuster had it all figured out. They figured out how to revolutionize things, and I would love to have a conversation about somebody who thought like that would never change, right?
Yep. Right. Exactly. No, and it's true. In my personal career, I mean, one of my first jobs was developing and designing interactive CD-ROMs. I thought that was like, there you go. I'm going to be doing that for a long time. Nope. Didn't end up taking off those CD-ROMs. But
I know you say that nowadays, and you get some sideways looks from some individuals.
Yeah, people
like,
don't know.
What is that? My son actually picked up a CD the other day and said, "What is this thing?" And I was like, "Oh God, I'm old."
I know. Yeah, what is this thing? What is this, some sort of weird mirror? I don't know.
Right.
Anyways, well, Rich, I want to thank you so much.
Your mirror? It's weird.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. So I'm guessing the answer to our question is imposter syndrome is real. It is something you can address. And again, if you are somebody who feels like you're struggling with this, I think some of our best advice here has been reach out, talk to people. Like Rich had mentioned, create that personal board of directors. And, board of directors might sound a little, heavy or whatever, but it could just be account buddies,
Mhm.
people that you're being honest and vulnerable with about the growth that you're trying to experience. And those people are trying to grow. You can sit and share and swap ideas around those things, but make it something regular, make it something that you can, don't just try to solve this all on your own, I guess would be
Right.
one of my pieces of advice. Right, Rich?
100%, and,
Yep.
and stop comparing yourself to everyone.
Stop
Like,
comparing yourself.
again, stop thinking that everybody else has it figured out, because they do not.
They do not. Me and Rich don't. So
I sure don't.
we're trying to figure it out as we go. So, Rich, if I want to know more about the work you do, where's a great place to connect with you and find out more?
Yeah, you can find everything about me at richbracken.com. I've got podcasts galore on there, television appearances, blogs, all kinds of stuff, and a new video series coming out next week, Inspirational
Awesome.
Interruptions. I'm so excited about it. And again, here's a perfect example. I thank you, Kurt, for your insight, because I had to admit that I didn't know jack about cameras, and I have my new camera that's going to be making its appearance, its debut, thanks to Kurt, on Inspirational Interruption. So not that anybody needs to see me in higher def, but it's what the market calls for. So
Yeah,
I put my imposter syndrome away to get better at what I needed to do.
Yeah, and it's funny because before Rich had reached out to me 6 months before that, I had no idea about cameras or anything new. I figured it out too, so I'm just passing along the info. But yeah, Rich, I really enjoy our conversations. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today, and I look forward to having you on the show a lot more this year.
Thank you, man. I appreciate I'll be in higher def next time. So
Okay,
I appreciate
great.
the invitation. It's always good to talk to you, Kurt.
All right, thanks, Rich. All right, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. It means so much. So if you could, make sure you hit the like button. If you could, that's always helpful. And if you haven't subscribed, you should do the subscribe thing and all that stuff. More shows coming soon. If you've got ideas for topics, subjects, things that you're struggling with, or things that you just want to know more about, make sure you drop me a line. You can find us at Schmidtlist on Instagram. I just joined Clubhouse, so you can find me on Clubhouse now, I guess. Schmidtlist on Clubhouse, and then all the social platforms. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today. I hope today helped inspire and educate you. So have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.